God, I've been at it for the last 30 minutes trying to fix these blinds behind me. Oh my, they're just, they refuse to go up. You know those kinds of blinds you have that, I don't know when this type of blind was created. I don't know what you would call it. I don't know blinds types. I know Venetian blinds. That's about the only kind of blinds that I know. Although I'm sure I've dealt with multiple types of blinds in my life. You know, these things that you pull down over a window to give you some shade. And as it is, the studio is here in like a sunroom. Really, what is a sunroom? I've got 4 walls here, and 2 of them are, you know, all windows, and so I have a lot of blinds in here, and like 5 of them. 3 of them do not give me any trouble because I never really deal with them that much. They're almost always down, but the 2 blinds right behind me, if you're watching on video, or I'll just describe them to you as best I can if you're on audio, is that they look out onto the street behind me, and so like on video it kind of gives like a cool backdrop, like the street in my neighborhood in beautiful downtown Birmingham, Alabama. You can see people walking up from the bars, the Lakeview district down the street, stumbling back to their cars after a nice night of relaxing after a hard work week, right? And you can kind of see out of it. So I put the blinds up for that, but during the day they're down because it lets too much light in here and I can't see anything that I'm doing if I'm working in the office, which by day is an office, at night is the Midnight Citizen Studio. And by the way, this is the Midnight Citizen Show. I'm your host, Mike Booty, here in an office. And again, I hope you're listening on audio because like on video tonight, and not meaning to open this show by way of apology, but right. I apologize for something on just about every podcast I do, so I might as well just get it out of the way here. But like, you know, just my studio just looks really janky tonight, and I will fix it by the next episode if you want a clean looking Midnight Citizen Studio, but for now you'll just have to deal with it because the blinds are just broken. I think I pulled them down too much or something and they just won't go up. And it's driving me crazy, my little OCD brain that needs things to be perfect here in an imperfect time. In late May of 2025. Yeah, welcome to the show. Got a lot of comments I'd like to deal with from the last show. This normally kind of made a plea for comments on the last episode. It may have come off a little desperate, but it worked. Whatever. What can I say? You know, being desperate worked. I was like, I never have any comments to read on the show. Please comment on the show, and I would welcome you as well now. But I got a lot of good comments. I think it's because I asked a question. Like, maybe I should start doing that, asking actual questions for you to answer when you listen to the show. And last week I was asking the question, what is the worst job interview you've ever been on, right? I think it's something that we can all relate to, right? We've all got to serve somebody, so we all have to go on job interviews. And I was talking about the one that I was more or less kidnapped. I know that's a strong word, but I did go in for a job out in the suburbs. This is maybe about 12 or 13 years ago, thinking that I was, just going to go in and for like a sit-down interview, and the whole thing would take 15 minutes, and I would leave, and they would let me know, like a little while later whether or not I had the job. But it turns out that they stuck me right in the car. And before I knew it, I was on my way to Montgomery, Alabama. And which is, about 2.5 hours away, where I would spend the rest of my day. As it turned out, I did not know this. Never interview for a job where you don't know what the product is. Just, walking around downtown Montgomery, and peddling unsolicited coupon books, like I was in the 6th grade band and we were raising money, to go to state or something. And ended up soliciting them in the wrong building. It was a government building. And it turns out, I guess since maybe 9/11 in Oklahoma City, they don't really like, unauthorized guests in their government buildings. So we were detained and questioned for, as it turned out, like a couple of hours. It took a while for us to get out of there. And I got the job, right? I think because the guy felt so bad for me, but it was probably one of my worst job interviews. Not so much because of what happened on it, because I will admit, like coming home from it, I'm like, well, this was at least interesting, right? My philosophy in life is like, if you don't get a job, at least have an interesting story to tell about the process. But yeah, I think he just felt so bad about what happened that I had almost been like arrested. But yeah, I asked like, what are some other good jobs? And I got into like a long discussion with Rob here. Rob, we were talking about like he went in, and let me see if I can go back to the very beginning. This is turning out really well, right? Yeah, he said, while working on my journalism degree, I interned at 2 local newspapers. At one of my primary tasks was to read AP news stories on some antiquated computer system and rewrite them into news blurbs. At the other, I mostly did man-on-the-street bits that involved asking people pointless questions about the weather or traffic. The questions were inconsequential. What was important was getting their picture and names. People seeing themselves in the newspapers sells papers. It was at that latter newspaper that I learned the truth about small-town newspapers. The sales team had 30 employees, and then there were 3 other people, the editor and reporter, the photographer, and me. I was bluntly told one time, our job is to fill the white space around the ads with words and pictures. The true volume of journalism revealed. Yeah, I like that because I too wanted to be a journalist at one point. I like a lot of people had seen All the President's Men, right, and broadcast news, and had failed to see what both of those movies teach you is that it's like the default nature of journalism is commerce, is to sell things, is to basically peddle advertising, and it's only it's a gray area when you actually have news to report, right? Yeah. But, yeah, so, and, Rob said that when he applied for that job, this is the interview story, he had to go in and, like, pick a paragraph, and he had to do a typing test, right? This is when you actually had to do typing tests. I don't know if you have to do those anymore. I honestly don't. But what he did is, like, this woman who was like at least 70 years old, he said, like, gave him a paragraph to type up and said, type it as fast as you can and time yourself. And then she walked out of the room, and then basically what he did was he typed up the paragraph and then copied and pasted it 5 times. So, and she said it averaged out to where he could write 250 words per minute. So, but, I guess the woman, being too old to realize that that is really not physically possible, even for a young whippersnapper at a typewriter, like himself, he still got the job anyway. So that's, there you go. Right. And, yeah, thanks for that comment, Rob. I really appreciated that. We went back and forth on that because I too, one time I had to take a typing test for a newspaper as well. I had to go into the, Birmingham News here in town. I was offered a job interview to go in and write obituaries. And the thing is, you go in and you listen to a tape recording of a simulated phone call of somebody telling you that a loved one has died. So you write down all the information about the dead body and their life and all that stuff. And then you have to, type it up just really, really quickly while you're listening to it. So you can't go back. So this is completely ignoring the actual reality where you would just ask a real person on the phone to say, like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that last part. Like, how many years did they serve in the Chamber of Commerce, right? Oh, 13. Okay, 13. We just want to make sure we get it right, right? It's just not really the reality of it. But I get it. You had to take a typing test, all that. And as it happens, it didn't really matter anyway because the paper folded in like 4 more years anyway. But yeah, then you had to like take what you had written really quickly from listening to the tape recording, and then you would have to actually write the obituary. So you would write that, and they just took a while to get back to me. And it turns out they called me like 2 months later and offered me the job. And they said, like, we've never seen somebody type that fast. And I have never thought that I was a very fast typist. I'm a slow writer, but maybe I'm a fast typist. I don't know. But by that time I had another job, right? I had to move on. I had another job. So, and I honestly did not really want to be an obituary writer anyway, because think about like just the idea of like just sitting in a room every day, just listening to people tell you about their dead loved ones. And then having to condense somebody's life down to like a short TV guide length blurb just sounds incredibly, oh man, I don't know. Yeah. Like soul sucking to me, I think is a good word to say it. It's like that, Bartleby, the story by Herman Melville. I used to read that story with my high school students, my 10th graders, my sophomores. That whole story is about Bartleby, who just starts out as this good and loyal clerk for this lawyer and just does everything that he's asked. And then he slowly becomes very depressed and just eventually prefers not to do anything. And it's revealed that Bartleby's former job was working in the dead letter office of the Postal Service. He would just be in there all day long collecting dead letters, undeliverables. These letters that were addressed to people that had passed away, had moved on, and just these things with purpose that had nowhere to go. And that over time sort of became Bartleby, just this thing with this thing with purpose who has nowhere to go. And it's very much like just Herman Melville there in the 1840s, writing about mental illness, and just, if you haven't read the story Bartleby, it's really interesting, but that's very much like in line with, I think, what it would have turned out for me had I been an obituary writer. Right? So as it turned out, I did not take that job, and I'm sure my life turned out, all the better for it. Morgan writes that he went on a college campus interview. This was his worst interview. He just sat there the whole time. The interviewer literally could not explain to me what the company did or what the job would entail. Yeah. And that's enough said right there, Morgan. Totally. Because I have been on jobs before, and indeed, that's what the coupon book job was, the one that got me kidnapped and detained by the federal government for a brief time. That was, a lot of jobs that you go on where they don't tell you what the job is. It's because like they realize that once they tell you what the job is, you're going to immediately get up and leave. Right. That happened to me, like I said, with the coupon book job, where it's like no self-respecting person would go door to door and unsolicited sell coupon books. Right. I mean, they have the signs up that say no soliciting. You always think that that's sort of like just, I don't know, perfunctory, maybe left over from the previous tenant. Like nobody goes door to door selling vacuums anymore. Like, hey, can I throw a little dirt down on your carpet? Let me show you how fast I suck it up. Right. That's such a thing in the 1950s, but no, it still happens. And those signs very much serve a purpose. Well, not really like if you're a door-to-door salesman, you're going to ignore them anyway, right? But yeah, but like years ago, I took a job also where they didn't tell me what the product was until I just accepted the job. They told me all the things I was going to be able to buy once I sold the product, and then they brought it out and it was like knives, and I was like, oh God. So I've told that story on the show before about working for the knife company. And yeah, years later, I had a student who worked for that same company, and he did way better in it than I did. You know, he came in showing me how to like cut up a penny, and I was like, oh, I know, I think I remember how to do that. Cut up a penny with the scissors that are like the free gift with your set of knives. And but yeah, he did way better. I think like I worked for them for 3 months, and I think I made like $600 in sales. And he worked for them for like 3 weeks and tripled that. So he did quite well with it. So, but yeah. I mean, I wonder if you've ever found out what that job actually was, Morgan. I don't know. Let me know, because that's what happens here, right? It's good. I get comments and people tell me what's up. So yeah, let me know. And a friend of mine made me realize yesterday that yeah, for the rest of May, or it says like almost every day for the rest of May, the days are backwards, or the days are the same forward as well as backwards. So they're palindromes. Yeah. So there's 5/21/25. Is that right? 5/21/25. That's right. 5/22/25. 5/23/25. Yeah, all the way through May 29th, 5/29/25. Yeah, when? It says the pattern will repeat in June of next year. So, yeah, the conditions for a palindrome. What does this mean? It doesn't, I guess, mean anything. Like I said, I think a major theme of the show is like finding things that seem like they should mean something, but they just, at the end of the day, you know, they're just like mashed potatoes, I guess. I will say, though, it is very much a fitting theme for what has been going on lately with me, because it does seem like you know, all of my days are palindromes. You know, they're the same forwards as well as backwards. I know that you can't live backwards, but right in these days where I am between teaching appointments, and I have a summer ahead of me where I'm still constantly on the job market looking for jobs and just waiting to hear back on several interviews that I've gone on. And just several lines that I've thrown out there into the water, right? It's just, you know, every day is just like the same forwards as well as backwards. You know, I wake up in the morning and I do work. And what work do I do? Well, I don't get paid for it. But I just do anything that I can to just, you know, stay productive, stay, you know, I get online, I look for jobs, I send out cover letters and resumes, right? I look for other ways that I can make money while I'm waiting for a permanent job. Just anything I can possibly do, you know. And then I go and I deliver food. I just drive all day long delivering food. And just go around and just sort of, it's a daily struggle, obviously, like just not to feel like a loser. You don't have a job. I don't feel like a loser. I don't think I'm there yet. Right. I think I'm a couple more job rejections. No, I know it doesn't, it really, one of the things that I've learned from actively interviewing for jobs the last couple of months, and this is the first time in like 13 years that I've been actively interviewing for jobs. Everything that I've had throughout my professional working life, one thing has led to another. And this is just happens to be a time, right, where I am an adjunct teacher. I'm trying to find some kind of a permanent job. I've got adjunct appointments at the community college as well as the university here lined up into the fall, but those don't start until August. So between now and then is just right. So I'm driving around all day long, just delivering food to people and just, people who have jobs, going to tall office buildings and these small little, trucking companies, these logistic companies, out in the industrial side of town. And, just kind of thinking about the idea that like, a big part of interviewing, right, of being unemployed and trying to find a job, is just realizing that there is very much a difference between the jobs that you want and the job that you can get, right? And a lot of times, like what we want to reflect on our resumes and our cover letters and in talking to hiring managers and to companies is like the fact that like, this is the job that I want, right? But a lot of times you go in for an interview and they, I guess, see through a lot of your answers and they're like, this is not the job that you want, right? And what we really want to say to those people is just like, what, the job that I want is the job that you can offer me, okay? Because I'm unemployed, right? And that's what it is. And you kind of like I want to ask some of these people when I deliver food to them, when they open the doors to their offices, just like, what secret do you know? Like, how, like they to me are like on another elite level. They are the ones with jobs, right? I look up at them. They shine gold to me, right? And, but I never do that. I ask them for their delivery pin. I give them their tzatziki's and then I'm on my way. Right. Yeah. But there is also, again, this one thing of, driving around and delivering food and you get to thinking obviously like a lot about yourself and a lot about like why you're doing what you're doing at this point. And you kind of have this, deterministic aspect about the whole situation. And you're like, well, I am doing this right now clearly because there's something in me that wants to be doing this. Right. And I've talked about this on the show in the past that like a lot of what the reason that I started delivering food was I started doing it when I had a job. Right. And I did it for some practical reasons, like number one, like teaching, even with the salary, even with benefits, still does not pay all the bills at the end of the month. And you really do need to supplement that. And, I know it's like, that's a sad state of a very important job, right? Is that it's just, the teachers, most teachers that I know who are not married to wealthy people, who are really the breadwinners of the family, right? Do work second jobs, right? So, because they do have children to support and they have houses and mortgages and all that, and they want to take on family vacations to Disney and things like that. I never had that. I never had to make that much extra money, but I still needed to do some of it, right? But really what it was also why I started delivering food when I was still teaching and making money, years ago is because I like to be in my car. I like to be, have the window down. I like to be driving around and just being nomadic and not have anybody, standing over me while I'm working, while I'm making money. I wanted to have a way of making money independently, right? And that very much is like what it did. So it's like I am driving around all day long and I'm thinking like, I'm here because this is where I want to be. And there are definitely more times than not where I'm sort of like, God, do I really want a permanent job right now? Do I really want an office job? Do I really want to work with a big team of people that are all trying to serve a purpose that's collectively bigger than themselves, right? And that I go back and forth between that because I'm like, I don't know if I do, right? Because right now it's like when I'm teaching, it's kind of the same way. It's like my sister teaches middle school history, and she was telling me the other day, like, I love my job. I love teaching kids. You should come back. She said to me, you should come back and teach high school or middle school or something like that. And I thought about it for about a half a second. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And the reason I don't want to do that is because simply, when you teach college, you don't have all of this administrative oversight that you do when you teach high school, and you don't have to deal with parents and blah, blah, blah. I've talked about this before, right? There's just a freedom. It's like teaching distilled to its purest form. And that's what I like. I like jobs, and I like making money in a way that is like distilled to its purest form and just truly gives me joy that I'm just doing what I came into the room to do, right? Or into the car, as it were, I suppose. So, yeah. But, I don't know, like all that being said, right, I still would like a permanent job very much, right? Because, it is about, again, one of the things that you realize when you're unemployed and you're interviewing for jobs actively all the time on a continuing sustained basis, is the fact that you do have to compromise, right? There is a difference between the job that you want and the job that you can get. And yeah, I'm going around delivering food all day long and, seeing these people receive it, and not all of them look very happy, right? Not all of them look very happy. I know that they're making money, and I know that they're somewhat financially secure, because they have this job, right? Maybe they have a lot of debt, and maybe they just see no way out of it, and that's hampering their enjoyment that they would otherwise get from the job. But nevertheless, they have a job. They have that kind of security, that safety net of having a job, right? But they still don't necessarily look very happy, and it does remind me of that old commercial, that PSA, that shows that black and white picture of that like junkie, right, on the corner, and the narrator says, right, like, nobody ever said I want to be a junkie when I grow up. They never said that. And I think about the same thing. It's like, every time I see one of these very unhappy people in an office that I deliver, 3 Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches to, and they're clearly eating all of them, and a large Coke, I just, think that it's like that old PSA, and I just see them in black and white, right? And they're just kind of like, nobody ever said, I want to be a logistics manager for a trunking company when I grow up, right? So, I go out and deliver food, right? And then I'm home at the end of the day, and what am I doing? I'm back in front of my computer doing the same thing I did in the morning, right? A total palindrome. These are the days of the palindrome. Or as I said on the last show, right? The yo-yo. You start from a fixed position, you go out there and drive, and then you come right back. The yo-yo. which is not a palindrome. God, that would have worked out really well if it was, wouldn't it? But anyway, yeah, so yeah, I hope you're all doing well this week. Some exciting things happening with the show, and as I said, like I'm waking up in the day and I'm just going about this like honestly, if I don't have teaching to do right now and I'm still waiting to hear from, job interviews and things like that, it's what I'm doing is I'm basically treating this podcast, The Midnight Citizen, as well as where I'm hosting at my Substack, mikesbonfire.substack.com, as a job. I'm essentially treating that as a job. So I've been doing a lot of stuff, working a lot lately on the podcast, doing a lot of stuff that I've been meaning to do for a while over there at the Substack, and just getting it organized over there. Been actually updating the archive so you can access the archive, the entire archive from the Substack. I'm working on that. I'm also doing like a lot of writing, just getting up every day and like writing. I realize that a lot of great things have come from unemployed people throughout history, right? Mark Twain was a famously unemployed person, and he wrote some good stuff. Who else was unemployed throughout history? Some world leaders, some cult leaders, right? A lot of great, I don't want to say great, but, cults that we know about were started by unemployed people. I'm not saying that I'm threatening to start a cult or anything, or that I am starting one, but I'm just saying like cults usually start when people, lose their jobs at Starbucks and they go home and they just, write until 5 o'clock in the morning, while taking Benadryl. I'm not saying that that's what I'm doing. Again, I think I'm like a couple of job rejections away from that. I don't know. We'll see. Man almighty. Maybe this is why I haven't, maybe this is why I haven't gotten a job yet, is because my potential companies, right? The amalgam of the companies that I call Yo-Yo-Dine Industries, whatever is out there right now considering me as an applicant. Maybe they're listening to my podcast right now and just be like, I don't know, this guy's talking about drinking Benadryl and starting cults at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if he's a good fit for our for our logistics company. I don't know why I keep picking on logistics companies tonight. I don't know. But anyway, if you are one of those hiring managers, that'd be great. Go ahead and put a comment. Here's my question for you to respond to, right? How are things going? Are you any closer to making a decision on me? Are you? See, this is a good way of marketing, right? Because when you marketing your show, this is great guerrilla marketing here, I'm telling you, because like what's the first thing is going to happen when you apply for a job and they consider you as a serious candidate? They're going to Google you, right? So, and they're going to pay attention to whatever you put on the internet, and they're going to make their decision based on that. So like, that's a good way to, get my show out there, not Substack, not Instagram, not Facebook, not Blue Sky. I've never been on Blue Sky, but people tell me that's the new Twitter or the new X, which is the new Twitter. Just apply for a bunch of jobs that you could possibly be a good candidate at, and then have them check you out. And maybe they won't hire you, but they'll at least listen to you. There'll be new listeners. I think that's genius. Yes. Let's do that. Honey? Yes, dear. Just seeing what you were doing in there. Nothing. I'm just writing. Well, have you looked for a job today? No. Honey, listen to this. Okay, so there's like this space god named Xenu. Jesus. Yeah. So, speaking of impossible missions, yeah, I did go see, I went to the movies today, right? Or I guess yesterday. Now, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, but yeah, I went to, the movies, which is something I, rarely do. The last time I was at the movies, I think I was in February. And, yeah, this time around went to see a movie that was just as long as the last movie I saw there. The last movie I saw at the theater, I think, was The Brutalist. It was like a 4-hour long movie about a guy who builds a community center. That was my review for it. And yeah, the movie I saw today was Mission Impossible. It had a post-colon. I don't know what it is. The Dead Reckoning, right? Yeah, the way that I remember that is because I was like thinking about that movie Sling Blade and how he's always saying like, I reckon I want some biscuits and mustard. That's what how I was thinking about it. You know, it's like, it's, you know, Carl from Sling Blade is, you know, in Mission Impossible hanging off planes and anyway, hacking into government infrastructure. So yeah, I saw Mission Impossible today, and this was a movie that I think can also be summed up pretty well in one little line. I cannot claim credit for this review. This was said by this college-aged kid who was walking out of the theater right behind me after the 4 hours that we spent watching this movie. He just said, so that was a movie about a guy trying to stop ChatGPT. So, and yeah, that's sure enough what it was. There's, you know, Tom Cruise is in it, and he's in all of them, and he and his Impossible Mission Force, you know, the IMF, they're trying to stop this AI thing called the Nemesis, the Unity, the Entity. I genuinely, is like, a friend of mine who was seeing it tomorrow told me, like, do not spoil it for me. And I didn't tell him this because in a way that would be spoiling it, but I told him, I wanted to tell him, I'll tell you this right now, I don't think I could spoil this movie if I tried. Like, this movie is laughably complicated. It makes no sense to me at all. And none of these movies are supposed to make sense. I mean, the plots are incredibly difficult, you know, to understand. And I think you can get them if you watch them several times, but you know, I've seen a couple of them many times and I still can't tell you what happens in them. The reason you watch them is for the stunts, you know, you watch them because of the great stunt sequences, and that's pretty much it, except pretty much for the first movie. You know, the first Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise came out 30 years ago. It's hard to believe. I was in 7th grade. God, when that movie came out, you know, Mission Impossible. And, that first movie was not so much stunts, and that's one of the reasons why it is, like, it's one of my favorite, probably action movies of all time. If you can even really call it an action movie. It's got some great scenes of action, but it's a great thriller. It's just a great globe-trotting thriller where Tom Cruise is trying to hunt down, you know, like a digital arms dealer, essentially, is what that movie is. And, you know, that first movie 30 years ago was just based a lot more around suspense, around intrigue. And somewhere along the line, they just got completely more or less away from that. And everything became much more science fiction. And you know, it was based obviously like on an original show, and on Pluto TV, on my Roku TV, they've got an entire channel where you can just watch Mission Impossible shows all day long. So, and that's what I do a lot of the times. Like that's kind of a summer tradition of mine when I'm, you know, like not so much this summer because I'm gonna be working all day, but you know, during the summers when I would teach and I would just have a schedule all, you know, throughout most of the summer where my afternoons would just kind of be free. I would usually just sit down on the couch and like read a book and just have Mission Impossible on in the background at a low volume. But I would watch some of those old episodes, and that old TV show, you know, created by Bruce Geller with, who's that guy, the biography guy, Peter Graves, right? Have you ever seen a grown man naked? You know, Peter Graves was Jim Phelps, and he was the one constant of the show. Of course, there was like Greg Morris, who was on the show, and he had a son named Philip Morris, who grew up to be Jackie Chiles on Seinfeld, which is like some trivia that I learned. But yeah, that original Mission Impossible show was so low key, and each episode is almost like a silent movie. You know, like it was really based on I believe the French movie, Rafifi. Is that right? Or it's Italian. The Italian movie Rafifi, which, you know, is famous for like an extended jewel heist sequence, right? Where people, break in, I believe, to like the Louvre or something like that. And it's all done like completely silent. And so I think Bruce Geller saw that movie and he wanted to make an entire show based on that. So the original Mission Impossible show is based very much around, you know, misdirection and magic trickery, and the idea that there is just this mission that cannot be accomplished, but the team works together to create all of these tricks and ploys to get the, you know, enemies looking the other way so that they could accomplish their task. And it's just all very silent and very subtle. And that's what the first Mission Impossible movie, you know, in 1995 was, or was it 96? I can't remember. One of those years. But but the movies since then have just become like, each one has become increasingly, you know, more stunt based, you know, much, I sound old here, but much louder, more bombastic, just like every movie now. And of course, much longer, right? I think that first movie was maybe like 100 minutes long, if I can think about it, 100 minutes long, soaking wet. You know, this movie was 2 hours and 49 minutes long, right? 2 hours and I think I need to repeat that. Well, the first movie, so this movie was the sequel to another movie, another Mission Impossible movie, that came out, I think it was 2 years ago. And I can't remember what the post-colon was on that. I think it was like Mission Impossible, The Final Insult Part 1 or something like that. I can't remember. It was something ridiculous. And I was looking forward to it, but I had, the day before that movie, also seen the movie Oppenheimer, which was about 3.5 hours long. And so, you know, sitting through that movie plus, you know, the hour of movie trailers before it, you know, all in all, I was like looking at 10 hours in the theater that weekend. I just it just was not, I went into Mission Impossible after seeing Oppenheimer and I just fell asleep during that movie. I'm not, like, no joke at all. You know, it just, I was not up to it. I couldn't remember anything that happened in that movie at all. You know, which was a shame because you sort of needed to know in order to see the movie that we saw today. But also at the same time, not really, because really the first 45 minutes of the new Mission Impossible movie is kind of like a flashback of everything that happened in the last one. So you don't have to go back. It was really like all of those movie sequels in the 1980s, like the Karate Kid 2 or, you know, Rocky 2, where they just, the first 20 minutes is just showing you what happened in the first movie so you can remember, right? But, you know, I think back then, though, that had a real purpose because video stores were not as ubiquitous as they would later become. So people were genuinely going in to see Rocky 2 being like, I can't remember what happened in that first movie. What happened? Did he win? And, but now it's like people are coming into this movie and they had the last movie on streaming the day after they saw it in the theater, 2 years ago. So, but anyway, I don't know. But yeah, so I saw the new, I saw the new Mission Impossible movie, and probably not a movie I would have seen in the theater, but it's a big tradition because I go every year, and every time one of those movies comes out, I go and see it with my dad. It's sort of a tradition that we enjoy together. So we almost didn't see it today. Yeah, there was a bit of a near disaster beforehand. Not so much a disaster, because we just could have gotten a refund. But the thing with my dad, it takes a lot for him to. He plays golf he's very active. He's a very active senior citizen, but he has had a couple of knee replacements, and for him to get up and kind of come to the movies and walk across a hot parking lot and through a theater lobby crowded with people and into a movie theater and up some steps takes a lot for him, right? So I commend him for wanting to spend that time with his son. But yeah, today, he buys the tickets online, and we get to the theater, and of course now they do reserve seating, which I've cooled on. I used to be really, really against it, because I'm just like, listen, man, it's Darwinism. You get to the movie theater when you get to the movie theater. You get the seat you get based on your priority of what kind of seat you want, right? It's just that's the law of the jungle and the law of the multiplex, right? Is what I believe. But whatever. They have reserved seating now, so you buy the ticket. You can show up whenever you want to, and just sit down in the seat that you reserve. So Dad got us these 2 seats, and they're up a few steps in the stadium seating, and we get up there, and sure enough, there's 2 people sitting on our seats. And I asked my dad, let's look at the tickets, and we looked at the tickets, and yeah, sure enough, they're sitting in our seats. We double check, and I look, and I'm really immediately anxious, because I know this is not going to be, this has the potential to not be, a very pleasant experience. Okay. Because sitting there in our seats are a woman in what looks to be like she's a grandmother with her granddaughter. So the woman is maybe late 50s. The girl is about 5 years old. So, I'm about to have to boot these people out of our seats, even though we are clearly in the right. But I asked the lady, I apologize, ma'am. I think you're sitting in our seats. And she looks at her phone. She gets her phone out, and she's like, oh, no, these are our seats. And she shows us them. And granted, it's dark in the theater because, I tell my dad, we do not have to get there when it says we need to be there. Let's just get there. We've got reserved seats. Let's just use them. Let's get there 20 minutes after the actual start time of the trailers, so that when we get there, the movie will be about to start. And so we timed it, but this is what happens, right? This is what happens. Okay. Is that you show up, and of course 2 people in your seat. So now you have to have this conversation and sort things out with somebody while there's 18 speakers around you, and it's pitch dark in there. So I'm trying to look at her phone and make it out. And yeah, sure enough, I see on her phone, it says that she has those 2 seats. So I'm like, okay, I guess, technology blew it. It blew it, and it's too late. We couldn't do nothing about it. Right. So had to go out with my dad. And, my dad at this point has walked quite a bit, on his artificial knee. And there's an empty seat in the front row. And I just asked my dad if he wants to just sit down so I can go out and I'll handle this. Just sit down in the seat. And he's like, I can't watch the movie like this on the front row. I'm like, you're not going to watch it. Just like, So my dad insists and he comes out with me. And so we, go to the theater lobby, right? And try to figure this out. We're already talking about like a refund because clearly, even if the woman is in the wrong, we're not going to kick the woman and her child out of the seat. Even it's like we're just not. That would look terrible because there's an entire audience. It's a packed house of people who would see, like a 40-year-old guy and his 80-year-old dad, kicking this like woman and a 5-year-old out of their seats. It would look bad, right? So we're not about to do that, okay? And we're talking refunds and like maybe we should just go get a bite to eat. Let's go get a bite to eat or something. We're sort of already kind of like we're not seeing this movie today. So we go to the manager and we go to the lobby and I sort of try to track down the most official person that I see, which in this case was, this kid who looked like he was like about 19 years old. And he had those, he had like on a headband with like those Stitch ears, from that. There's a new movie, a Lilo and Stitch movie coming out this weekend, I guess. And, there's like this bear in it that has like these ears. And so, it looked like the entire the theater had gotten this big box of swag from the movie company because everybody is wearing these ears, these like bear ears, to advertise that movie. And several of the employees are walking around in like these pajamas that look like the character from the movie and all that. And so, it is like a very, I guess, absurd situation that we, the manager looks like he's having a great time and promoting this movie in his Stitch ears and everything, and we're kind of coming to him with a problem that he's not expecting, and we just tell him what happens, and he's like, well, let me go and talk to the lady and her child. And we're like, no, it's okay, just give us we'll take a refund, we don't want to kick them out of the theater. And he's like, no, we need to figure this out because like the system never double books. And so it's like, okay. And I tell the guy, I want you to be really specific, okay? Can you please just let the lady know that you're trying to solve this problem and not that we're asking you to go and do this? He's like, yeah, sure. So, of course, I have no faith in that at all, right? But anyway, so Stitch goes away and goes into the theater. My dad and I are just kind of hanging out there in the lobby, and there's like all these like theater employees going by us in pajamas, and Lilo and Stitch wear and swag and all that, and talking about where we're going to go eat. And then sure enough, Stitch comes back out at us and he's like, okay, you guys can go in, you're good. And I said, dude, you didn't just kick them out, did you? And he's like, oh, no, I didn't kick them out. No, I told them to leave. Like, what? And so before we knew it, the woman is coming toward me, and I'm looking at her expression, and she seems to me to be apologetic. She seems to be okay. She's like, okay. And she comes up to me and she says, I am so sorry. We bought tickets to tomorrow, not today. And we were also supposed to see the movie Lilo and Stitch. Okay. And so suddenly it made sense because I'm sort of looking at like a 5-year-old. And I've been to a lot of movies before. Usually they're horror movies where you just are in the middle of like a really gruesome scene, and suddenly you hear like a kid crying or whatever. But yeah, it made sense that the 5-year-old is probably not there to see like a 2.5 hour long, Mission Impossible movie. So she's really apologetic, and she's like, but y'all better get in there now. It's starting. So we say, okay, thank you very much. So, it's just a case of mistaken identity, I suppose. So Yeah, I was telling the woman, you know, because we were in conversation for a bit while the guy, the manager in the Stitch ears, was processing her ticket, so I guess she could go and immediately see the Lilo and Stitch show that they were there to see. I was talking to the lady. I was like, man, I said, ma'am, this reminds me so much of like when this guy right here, and I patted my dad's shoulder, you know, took us to see movies when we were kids. He would always take us into the wrong theater. And it's true. I remember very specifically a time that he took my sister and I to see that movie Hook, you know, about what would happen if, you know, Robin Williams grew up and had to go back to being Robin Williams again, right? And, you know, Captain Hook was there and everything. And really wanted to see that movie. And, you know, my dad took us to the theater, and we walked into a screening room, and we sat down, and like there was Michael Douglas, and he was like blowing up things and like, you know, having love scenes with Melanie Griffith. And, you know, it took us a little bit to realize that this was the movie Shining Through. It was not Hook. You know, so, you know, that's the kind of thing I suppose that, you know, that happens. You know, this is what happens. Right? So, yeah, but we watched the movie, and like I said, I don't think I could spoil it because I really don't honestly have the slightest clue really what happened to that movie. I'm not being facetious at all. I'm watching the movie the whole time, and like I said, like the first in the pre-credit sequence, you know, like there's always a pre-credit sequence right before they play that great classic Mission Impossible music by Lalo Schifrin. You know, with the fuse going and everything, just gets you so excited and pumped up about the movie. It's so exciting, right? But, you know, they always do like a pre-credit action sequence, which in this case, in this movie, was like 30 minutes long. You know, I remember in the first movie, it was about like 3 minutes long, and it wasn't even an action sequence. It was just like an intense moment before the movie, right? But there's so much exposition and so many flashbacks and also so many scenes. The movie goes from like one side of the globe to the next, and this is just like the first 10 minutes. And what I realized is going on in that pre-credit sequence of Mission Impossible is I think the filmmakers, and these are very smart people making these movies. They're not dumb, okay? Like Tom Cruise is obviously, he's been around, you know, his career as an actor honestly goes back to the year of my birth, right? I think he was in that movie The Outsiders the year that I was born in 1982, you know, and that was so 42 years ago. So this is a guy who knows how to stay around. He knows the movie business. He knows what audiences. He's a very smart guy, right? And you know, and the guy who's directing it, he's teamed up with this guy many times. The same guy, I believe, who directed Top Gun. Is that right? Christopher McQuarrie, you know, who wrote The Usual Suspects, that great movie, and won an Academy Award for it. So like these are very smart people. And so what I realized was happening in the pre-credit sequence is that they are making a plot that is so laughably complicated that it will make the blunt brute force action scenes funny, right? And that's indeed what happened. Like, it's just, this is the best I can do in terms of spoiling the movie. Okay, so close your ears for like the next 10 seconds, okay? But after a very long moment of interrogation and a lot of exposition, suddenly there's just a very quick action scene that is very, very funny, and all of the action happens off screen, off camera, and you just get the reaction of one of the characters looking at it. and you're realizing that this is a movie that cost $300 million and they're not even showing the action. And that was brilliant. That's one of the smartest things I've ever seen done in a big budget summer movie. Okay, sorry. I think that was longer than 10 seconds. I apologize. I'll put like a little blurb in there, but it still doesn't really, I guess, ruin it that much. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah. But it is. It's like it's like this latest movie has reduces Mission Impossible down to the most B movie type of material that you could possibly imagine. The B movies are defined by high concepts and low budgets. Now in this case, there's obviously a very big budget, but it's a huge high concept, and this is something that goes back to Jaws, when you're taking B movies and you're throwing a lot of money at them. So this is not a new thing, obviously, but it is. It's like characters delivering incredibly cheesy dialogue, but you get what you pay for. You get like really cool stunts, and that's all I can say. It's like it's got good stunts, and if you can sit through the length of a baseball game, you can sit through the length of Mission Impossible, The Final Insult Part 2, or whatever it's called. And since most theaters now you can like buy alcohol, I did not buy beer and alcohol today, because like unemployed, it's like $30 for a double shot of Maker's Mark. It's but if you do drink during this movie, there is a drinking game that you can play with it if you want to. It's like take a drink every time you hear a character say Inuit fisherman. Inuit fisherman. That's the code. It is true. Like they say that word Inuit fisherman or that term so many times in this movie, and it always sounds like it was dubbed in editing. Like they never actually said it on set, that it was just like inserted in later on. But every time a character is like explaining the plot, they always have to take a pause and say, it's like a character's like, and then they went to Alaska and they got this part of the key, and then they got went to the other part of Alaska and got that part of the key, and then the key like turned up on the surface of Alaska and it was found by an Inuit fisherman, and then that key was like taken to another place and given to somebody else, and then somebody died and they were discovered by an Inuit fisherman. Right? It's just it made me laugh every time I saw it, and I kind of like kept on looking around, and I was like, why is nobody laughing? Man, one thing that was, truly amazing in that movie today is that I think in that entire time I was in that theater, I was the only one who got up and went to the bathroom. It was truly amazing, I just think like the way that they're building these theaters now, you really do feel like you're on your own box, because you're in this plush faux leather chair with reclining seats, and it's like a bucket, and you really do not have any peripheral vision. It really is like you're just designed, I guess, because of the dark. It's like you only can look ahead of you. And so you're just completely cut off from the rest of the audience. And so like I had no idea what the audience's reaction was from any of that movie, except for that guy who walked out of the theater after me that just said, so like that was a movie about ChatGPT, right? But yeah, like the only time I really knew what was going on in that theater is when I got up to like go pee. And it truly just looked like people were like sequestered in there. Like they had looked at the runtime and they're like, okay, this movie's just a little bit under 3 hours. So that means we're going to go in to the theater at like 10 till 4 and we're going to come out at like 8 o'clock. So let's just like get ready for this. And like you just feel like they brought sandwiches and, picnic baskets and like buckets and I saw one couple, no kidding, that was like spread out across each other, and they had just a gigantic blanket that they had brought from home, I guess. It was truly weird. It was like, you know, that movie Conclave, where all the cardinals sequester themselves inside the Vatican and don't come out until they've chosen a new pope. That's what it felt like. It just felt like everybody was locked in to this one room and don't come out until he achieves the impossible, you know. Yeah, and does he achieve the impossible? I gotta tell you, if he didn't, I would have asked for my money back. Because, like, seriously, 3 hours is a lot of time to spend doing something like with nothing to show for it. Is all I've got to say, you know. Yeah, one more thing tonight. That yeah, my good buddy since college, Alex, sent me a message on Instagram, private message the other day. There was a link to this video that came out 5 years ago, so you've probably seen it. If you follow a lot of the same Instagram channels or just are into, you know, funny retro things, this video that is like keeping up with the times in the 90s, Guide to Slang. This is claims to be what I thought. I thought this was a fake video, honestly. You know, I did a lot of investigating on it. I told Alex that I put a crack team of Midnight Citizen investigators on it. But in reality, it was really just me. So hopefully he doesn't hear this episode and my secret is exposed. But yeah, this is a video of that this local news station did in 1991. And, you know, I'll just play it through. I guess they had like this news magazine show back in the early 90s. And, you know, about 5 years ago, I suppose they did this thing called Flashback Friday, where they just sort of said that, like, this is what we did back in the 90s. This is a spot we did. And, you know, again, you may have seen this. This is circulated around. I've seen it several times, but Alex just sent this to me saying that this seems like it'd be a good segment for me to talk about on the show. So here I am talking about it. So let's play it.
If you want to sound as if you've stayed up with the times, you know that awesome or big time will get the point across as in, that was an awesome evening segment I just saw.
So here's a guy
well,
like in
a
white knit sweater.
Yo, a greeting.
Yo, Curb, what's up?
Clutch the pearls, said in amazement or disbelief.
Well, you know he's married.
Clutch the pearls.
Bucked. In the 80s, it was just wasted.
I don't know how many I had, but boy, did I get bucked. I sure felt it the next morning. That was really the worst thing I'd ever done.
I hope you didn't.
All right, so this is the one thing that made me feel like it was fake, right? Is because I've never heard the term bucked, and the way that he's saying it makes it sound like, you know, like some news producer went home and like asked their kid, like, what are some hip words that you kids are saying? And the kid just made something up so that their TV producer mom would just look like an idiot. But like, they're using bucked as a verb, is like a past participle to say that you were really wasted, you were really plastered last night. You know, let's go back and hear that whole thing, and I'll stop talking. Clutch the pearls. I've heard that one before, obviously. Pearl clutching.
Pearls.
Bucked. In the 80s, it was just wasted.
I don't know how many I had, but boy, did I get bucked. I sure felt it the next morning. That was really the worst thing I'd ever done.
I hope you didn't drive home.
No way.
MacGyver, as in the TV show where the impossible is often
Yeah, obviously
accomplished.
heard this one.
I can't believe you got off that speeding ticket. What a MacGyver.
Norville, to secretly undermine.
What? I can't believe she saw your job. You've really been Norville.
Okay, now wait. Now that right there was, I was like, that's what got me looking at the comments. It's like, surely there's like 3,000 comments on this video. Somebody had to have found the original source video for this, because like Norville, like I'm assuming that refers to Deborah Norville. I think Deborah Norville, right? She was like a former like morning news anchor, you know, who I believe was, you know, sacked for, you know, various reasons. I think like she was the reason, like I think Joan London took over for her, or maybe it was like Katie Kirk or whatever. You know, it's all covered in that book, Top of the Morning by Brian Settler, right? But yeah, that almost sounds like a fake term or something. Like, man, you really got northed, right? Like, you know, Oliver North or something, which is like, and I just expect the news guy to be like, you know, when you get northed, that's when somebody throws you under the bus or something like that, you know? That would make more sense, but it just sounds like these are like fake terms that they're now coming up with, because I've never heard Norvold, right? Never heard Norvold, ever.
Black & Decker, or a real tough assignment. You get the analogy, right?
This job is a real grind. It's just a Black & Decker.
Some phrases may be around forever.
Well, look, I gotta run. Peace.
Bye, Tom.
One last word for words of the 90s. You got to remember that hip slang changes rather quickly, so if you want to use any of these phrases, you better use them in a hurry. I mean, think of Bart Simpson. Cowabunga is dreadfully out of date, horribly out of style, and you don't want to appear bizotic, do you?
Okay, I don't know what bizotic is, but that's you know, the other thing that got me confused here, because for a minute there, you know, it sounds like he's talking about nobody's going to be talking about Bart Simpson in 40 years, right? And obviously that's not true, because we talk about how much The Simpsons has not been good since the 90s, but, you know, we still talk about it. But that's not what he's saying. He's not saying that nobody's going to talk about Bart Simpson, and he's saying that nobody's going to be saying cowabunga, and nobody says it anymore now. Like, that's how fast it aged out. So it's one of these videos that, like, you know, and there are companies out there like satire news companies that are really good at fooling you. Like a while back, another friend of mine sent me another video that said, this is a really good video for you to share on your podcast. And it was a podcast because I always like to play training videos, and it was a fake training video, and it looked actually very real, you know, like made in like the 90s or something like that, but it was just too on the nose and too satirical to be real. So naturally I got completely fooled by this video that I just showed you. I really did think that it was like a fake video, and I looked around, no kidding, for like 30 minutes before it was like, no, this is an actual real segment that a real television station in Seattle played. You know, But yeah, like when I hear something like, they start out with like yo, and it's like, yeah, everybody knows yo. Everybody's using yo, right? Especially in the early 90s, a lot of people, it was a very popular thing if you had like a Toyota, to scrub out, the letters on either side of yo. So you just make like yo, right? But yeah, clutch the pearls is a term that I did not hear actually really until much later. Like my wife used to use it all the time, and clutch the pearls like refers to, like the conservative upper class lady, every time she hears something that bucks her sexual mores. No, I'm using buck the wrong way there, right? It's not plastered, not getting drunk, right? But every time she hears something that she doesn't like and is like a threat to her conservative upper class standards, she clutches her pearls, right? But yeah, this thing like, Norvald, what? To undermine somebody. But yeah, MacGyver is another one of those things. Like if this was like a typical joke sketch, the terms would become increasingly more niche to the 90s and increasingly more ridiculous, right? Like, oh my gosh, man, my boss is such a belding, right? Or something like that. It would be like that, right? Yeah, but MacGyver is like, to easily assemble thing or to assemble things out of nothing. I've never heard the term Black and Decker before. This is a total Black and Decker, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, thanks Alex for sharing that with me. I totally thought it was fake at first, but I guess I got Norvald by history, I suppose. That's what happened. Or bucked. I got bucked by history. I think that's probably what happened. Let's end this episode the way we began. Let's palindrome it. In these palindrome days of May 2025. Yeah, last week I was talking about, or on the last episode, I was talking about tetraphobia, which is the fear of the number 4. I was talking about this in reference to the fact that the elevators in the university hospital that I spent a lot of time in earlier this month, when my mother-in-law was there unexpectedly, did not have a 4th floor. You could go to 1, 2, 3, and 5, but not 4. And so that's what, and a listener actually pointed out to me that the name of that is, tetraphobia is the fear of 4. Like we have a fear of 13, but what it turns out is that in Asian cultures, there's a fear of the number 4. Why did that translate to a hospital when no other buildings in America in Western culture seem to adopt it? I don't know. But anyway, but Dave in Kentucky gave a really interesting insight. He said if you go to the casino and take a look at the baccarat tables, the most popular layout has a space for 7 players numbered 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And he said it's not uncommon to see all 7 spots occupied by Asian people. And that's fascinating. So the next time I go to a casino, I told them I know exactly what I'm going to be doing is going to the baccarat table and, checking out that layout that doesn't have the number 4. So another question, right? So just if you're keeping score, there's, a couple of questions I'm asking you to, answer in the comments of this episode. Do you have any other instances of the number 4 being left out of things, the tetraphobia. And also, what's the deal? Like, why haven't you hired me yet? I don't know. It's all right. It's okay. Interestingly, I didn't think about this, by the way. So I was saying that on the last episode of the show that I've always had tetraphobia without even really thinking about it. I've just always had an aversion to the number 4. And I've always considered my lucky number to be 5. And the reason I believe that is because I think family is very important to me. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of my family. And, my mom and my dad, me and my 2 sisters. And so I always considered the number 4 as being an incomplete number. Like, you cannot have 4. You always have to have 5 of something. So I always considered that, right? And I did realize last week, on the last show, I was talking about how when I got the news on my camping trip that my mother-in-law had fallen and had to go into the hospital unexpectedly. On my way back from Georgia and my camping trip, I stopped at a gas station in Georgia, as I always do, and I got my wife a lottery ticket, like a scratch-off lottery ticket, and I brought it to her because I felt like it would lift her spirits up, and also it's just a tradition. And like in moments of anxiety like that and paranoia, is like a loved one just went into the hospital, you don't know what's going to happen next. I just felt it would like be good to just still do the normal, just any normal thing you could do. So stopping at a gas station and getting a lottery ticket, right, is what I did. I did not get around to giving her the lottery ticket until a few days later. I completely forgot that it was in my bag. But there we were sitting in the hospital room once Jean Marie, my mother-in-law, Jessica's mom, was finally stable, went through surgery, was recuperating in her room, and we were sitting there by her bed. And I finally remembered it, and I brought out the lottery ticket and gave it to Jessica, and Jessica took a penny out. She started to rub it off, and sure enough, like, her lucky number was 5, right? So, you have like a lucky number on the ticket that you scratch off, and then you have to like match that number to other locations on the ticket that you also scratch off. So she scratched off 5. That was her lucky number. And she scratched it, and there was another 5, and scratched it, and there was another 5. And by the time it was over, she won $5. So I consider that, a win, right? Screw you, Tetraphobia. There it is. All right, well, I want to thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the Midnight Citizen Show. I've been your host, Mike Booty. You can, as I said, follow me. Everything that I do is over there at mikesbonfire.substack.com. You can go and find the show there. Please leave a comment. I also really encourage you. I've never been pressing about this in the past, but where I'm hosting my show these days, where I'm looking at most of my, like, just analytics as much as those can matter to me, is on Spotify. So go and leave a thumbs up on Spotify, give me a comment. And obviously it just helps other people discover the show. I don't think I need to tell you this by now, but I've also been doing like a lot of stuff. I'm working on a lot of stuff to add to the Instagram over there as well. I've actually discovered lately that Instagram, and I credit Bob Lament, whose show Static Radio I've recently appeared on. Bob Lament, who is older than me and has really no right whatsoever to preach to me about Instagram. Like, I'm the young guy. I should be telling you about how great Instagram is, but it's the other way around in this case. Bob has really told me to try out Instagram. I was ready to completely just get rid of it. And I have. I've been trying it out over the past, like, few weeks, just doing some things on there, like experiments. Like, if you follow me over there, you kind of know. Editing, like, little short videos and putting together reels and things like that. And so Instagram is something I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff with, I feel like, this summer. So please go over there and follow me at _Midnight Citizen Podcast. I link to it in all my show notes, but just, it'll be there. But you can also, remember, watch the show on Spotify. Going back to Spotify, you can watch the show on Spotify because I post the video link there. So when you push play on Spotify, it just shows you the video automatically. You can always switch to audio, of course, but it's there. But I'm also over on YouTube. Also, _Midnight Citizen Podcast. That's where I am these days, okay? Tell your friends. If you have a job that I would be good for, consider bringing me in. Or maybe don't bring me in. Maybe you just, like, love my show and you want to keep me doing this. In that case, totally fine. Somebody out there's listening is like, God, this Mike, it's like, I've got his applications cover letter. He's like, just, a great candidate for this job. But man, I love this podcast. I just want him to, I don't want to hire him so he can just keep doing the show. Tell me that in the comments. That would be an incredibly nice compliment to hear, and also really mean, but mostly nice. Thank you. Keep your eyes open.